I wanted to start today with a deeper dive into Tennessee. We've talked about the LSU storylines all week. That, of course, has been you know, the passing the ball down the field, what they're going to do in terms of that, the players only meeting, can the defense hold up, all those types of things. This is more, I think, for me, a segment on Tennessee. I went back and watched a great majority of the Florida and Pittsburgh games. All due respect to the Vols, I'm not going to put a huge amount of stock into the Ball State game nor the Akron game. They ripped those two teams apart. I don't care. I want to know what you did against Pittsburgh, who is functional, although they lost to Georgia Tech last week, and what you do against Florida, who is not the Urban Meyer, Steve Spurrier Florida Gators, but still a talented football team that is fairly comparable, I think, in a lot of ways to LSU. So, big picture, what is Tennessee at this point? You know this. They're tied for second in the country in scoring offense. They're tied for first in the country in passing offense. They are the top total offense in college football at 560 yards per game. They've been good on third down, 45%. They are tied for fourth in the country in 30-plus yard pass plays. They've had 13 of those. They're eighth in the country in first downs per game. You get the picture there. And then on the same deal that tells the story that we all know at this point, in terms of time of possession, there are only 131 teams in D1, and they're 123rd. They are near the bottom, near last in the country in time of possession. They don't care. They're going to get out there, and they're going to go real fast and punt, or they're going to go real fast and score a touchdown, but they're going to go real fast either way, and that bears itself out. By now, you also know that their defense has been questionable. They're 28th in the country in scoring defense and 19 points per game, which is not terrible. They're 21st in rush defense at 97 yards per game, which is not terrible. Again, 131 teams in D1. They are 128th in pass defense, 309 yards per game. That drops them all the way back to 94th in the country in total defense at 407 yards per game. And they don't get after the passer all that well either, 51st in the country in sacks. So the defense is very vulnerable. You've watched a lot of Tennessee play this year. We saw them that Thursday night against Ball State. You saw a lot against Florida. Your overall impressions after I lay out all the numbers there with Tennessee?
I'd be shocked if we don't have a handful of plays that are plus 20 yards or more. They give up a lot of big plays, and to me, that's the first sign of a defense that's just not very good, whether it's in the run game, the pass game. A lot of times teams are just kind of getting what they want, and you go back and watch that Pitt game, their running back's having a day. He goes well over 106 yards a carry against that Tennessee defense, and they had a great opportunity to go up 17-0 against that Tennessee offense, and I know that could change the complete perspective of that game. And I thought, watching that Florida game, Richardson just kind of threw the ball where he wanted to. I thought they didn't do a great job keeping their rush lanes, which is something, if you do that against Shane Daniels, he's going to take off and run down the field. So looking at this team as a whole, I just think that defense isn't great. Their offense, scores so many points week in and week out, and you can trust an offense to score 35-plus a week. Your defense doesn't have to be great. So I think for LSU, of all weeks, this is a defense you can take advantage of, whether you want to pass the ball to the weapons on the outside, if you want to get your run game going. I don't think they're world beaters. The talent just isn't quite there when you think of some of the other teams in the SEC. So of all weeks, man, I'm expecting these guys to score some points against this Tennessee defense.
So I'll go back to the notes I have on the Pitt and Florida games. Against Pittsburgh, in that game, Pitt hits a 78-yard touchdown run right through the Tennessee defense to take a 7-0 lead. It's 10-0 Pitt late in the first quarter, and Pitt has the ball in the red zone, and Slovis throws a pick. Now, it was on third down, so they're going to have to kick a field goal anyway. But they were up 10-0 with the ball in the red zone, and Keaton Slovis throws a pick. Immediately, that pick was a touchback. The Vols take it 80 yards for a touchdown. Pitt then had a 57-yard touchdown pass to their tight end, who hurdled the safety on the sidelines and kept going. It was an incredible play. But that put Pitt up 17-7 with 10 minutes to go in the second quarter. It looks like you're going to go Tennessee scored a couple touchdowns in the second quarter, played really well, and it looked like the Vols were going to go up 21-17 at the half, and then Slovis fumbled, and Tennessee got a late field goal to go up 24-17. So they blitzed them in the second quarter, but did not come out too quick in the first quarter. Then in the second half, Tennessee comes out and scores 3 straight touchdowns and takes total control of the game. So it was a slow start. Pitt punched him in the mouth and could have really gone up 17-0 and did not. And then Tennessee hammered off a bunch of touchdown drives in a row. That'll be a theme here as we come back to the Florida game. But in that game, Tennessee threw for 325 yards, and Cedric Tillman had 162 of those, so more than half of their passing offense. He is questionable for this game. Josh Heupel said today in his press conference that Tillman was, quote, out there moving around, which is part of it, but he's 3 weeks removed from this tightrope procedure, so we'll see as the week moves on. He's obviously a huge part of it. So in that Pitt game, you look at a slow start, a blitzkrieg in the middle of the game, and did enough to win with the offense shouldering the most of the load. I mentioned that slow start. In the game against Florida in Knoxville, with 2 minutes and 25 seconds to go in the first half, so the first half's almost over, Tennessee's got 10 points. And with 2 minutes and 25 seconds to go in the first half, Tennessee gets the ball at their own 1 yard line and goes 99 yards for a touchdown with 7 seconds left in the half. So a 99-yard awesome drive that Hooker was sensational on to get them to 17 points at the half. Then they come out in the third quarter and they go touchdown drive, touchdown drive, touchdown drive, 73 yards, 62 yards, 87 yards. Hooker was calm, made the right reads. He played awesome, but it was another slow start, and then they got in the locker room at halftime and routed them in the third quarter. I have more to talk about, but is there anything to the fact that Tennessee's not starting as quickly? Are they wearing teams down with their tempo late in the game? I mean, what do you think is the biggest reason, adjustments, that they're having the success they are in the second, especially the third quarter, as opposed to the start of these games against Pittsburgh and Florida?
Yeah, I think, they had some fumbles in that Florida game. And I also think, anytime you don't punt the ball in the game, it's probably not, the worst offense you've ever seen. Yeah. And I also think, too, I have to agree with you with the tempo. That's the whole point of it. And that's kind of what Chip Kelly started a while back. And it's like you go fast, you go fast, you go fast, you keep the defense on the field. And, you're trying to run as many plays as possible. And then when you got a quarterback that's not turning it over, it's not really getting sacked a ton, it's going to wear the defense down. And you continue that pace for 60 minutes and you're going up and down the field, especially if you're scoring fast. That defense has got to trot right back out there, and you got to play a whole nother series. And so I think it's been a lot of that. That's quite why you kind of see those blitzkriegs in the second half and not in the first half. They're wearing some of these defenses down. And I think obviously without Tillman, that kind of hurts their passing attack a little bit. But that's kind of the whole thing about this offense. They want to keep you out there. They want to not allow you to substitute and get fresh bodies out there. And, by the end of the game, they got 30-plus points. And if you don't have an offense that can match that, Tennessee's normally going to come out the other side with a victory.
As far as that running game goes for Tennessee in the Florida game, there wasn't a lot there. Statistically, it looks really nice. Hooker had a 44-yarder that was not a design, and that's a great play by him, and that's certainly something you've got to pay attention to. But outside of a 39-yard run by Jabari Small, which certainly counts, they didn't really have a bunch of chunk plays in the ground game. It's kind of a keep you honest, go fast. They certainly used it in the red zone, and they've scored some touchdowns around the goal line with the run game, but it's not one that's cut deep. That's a Tennessee offense. Now, as far as defense goes, in watching that game against Florida, there's not much more I can say than Anthony Richardson was sensational. Mm-hmm. He made a lot of plays in that game off schedule. Dropping back, little pressure, he evades it, runs outside, makes plays down the field, runs a little bit, but more often than not, keeping his eyes down the field, extending the play, and making a lot of really strong throws to uncovered guys in the secondary. It wasn't that Tennessee was busting a ton of coverages. They did have a couple, or that Richardson was sitting in the pocket picking them apart. More often than not, it was just extended plays where Tennessee didn't have the ability to cover very long. So the question is, certainly Jaden Daniels has some of the skill set that Richardson has. I think he could run with him. I don't think he can throw it as far, but he can do the things that Richardson did in terms of completing those 15, 18-yard throws, extending plays. We saw him do it against New Mexico. That's New Mexico. The entire thing boils down to, can he do it against Tennessee the way that Richardson did for 500 yards of total offense?
Yeah, I think a big part of that was Tennessee getting out of their rush lanes. If you watch that game, they're running up the field, they're flying up the field, and I think if Tennessee's defensive coordinator has half of a brain, he's not going to tell those guys to do that this week. You're going to tell them, stay in your lane, don't bull rush back into the quarterback, kind of keep him in the pocket, and, hopefully the guys up the middle can get home. But, they did a terrible job against that. I just thought that defense does not play well. Anytime you walk into a football game and the other opposing quarterback's responsible for over 500 yards and 3 touchdowns, that's just not a great defense. And then they were just very undisciplined. I thought they didn't tackle well in the secondary. Their safeties and corners don't tackle well. So, it just opened up the world for Richardson to just light them on fire. And that's exactly what happened. But, what happened in that game, their defense kind of did them a disservice and kind of got blitzed, and it kind of put Florida behind the 8 ball. But, yeah, I think that defense, they have to be a lot more disciplined. If you're going to fly up the field with your ends, Jaden's got to take off, and he can have a very similar day because Richardson led Florida in rushing that game. They couldn't really get anything from their running backs, and so he led them in rushing, and obviously we know what he kind of did in the passing game. So maybe they change that strategy, but if they come in the Death Valley and rush those ends upfield, Jaden may rush for 150 himself.
As far as the injuries go, obviously nobody from Tennessee is playing awesome football in the secondary at this point, but their senior corner starter, Warren Burrell, had surgery this last week. He is out for the season. But they do get a little help in safety D. Williams. He has not played in any of the games, but he has been cleared to practice, has been practicing, and they expect him to play. So one of the better players in the Tennessee secondary, not going to play the rest of the season. It's a questionable unit, and it just got a little bit more questionable as they come to Tiger Stadium.
Thanks so much for watching Hunt Hill on YouTube.
Now do us a favor. Hit the red subscribe button below and throw us a like. We'll see you next time.